Welcome to, this is the No Name podcast that I started with my son, and about 3 years ago, we started it. And now we're transitioning it to fashion freedom.
Okay.
And that is a little bit on play on words and also an action to fashion freedom, but also because right behind this wall is where my small business is. It's a fashion boutique. And I believe that fashion is an expression of free speech.
Okay.
And American fashion especially has liberated the world through the world of fashion and influenced free thinking, free expression. I mean, you think of like music, American music, and where it goes. So culture and fashion is very powerful.
You had very strong thoughts about freedom and fashion being one.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious, like, how you got to that.
So before living in the United States, I shared a little bit previously that my family, I was born in the Soviet Union, and my family lived there before my family and I were resettled to the United States as refugees. In that type of society, everything from appropriate clothing to haircuts to the way people present in public to what's allowed and fashionable or produced, what's produced even for the stores, because government controls production.
Right.
So samples of what's going to be made for men and women to wear is decided by the government.
Right.
And so for me, I was always so fascinated once we came to the United States with like Americana fashion, because back in the former Soviet Union, things like denim jeans and like Calvin Klein clothing or Nikes or Adidas or these staple brands associated with the United States, with America, with free society, were banned and were considered contraband. And you can get in a lot of trouble if you had those, because how did you get them?
Yeah.
In a closed society? So for me, I was so fascinated, even when we first arrived here, seeing the women dress how they wanted to, and men too.
Yeah.
But especially the women, and I just came from a different society where I didn't see that. And also now in the world, it doesn't have to be like 30, 40 years ago. Even now, there's parts of the world where women especially are policed in how they dress or how they present themselves outside. And I think people take it for granted that your very first expression of speech, nonverbal, is with your body. Nonverbal communication, what you choose to put on. You see those T-shirts, those statement T-shirts. They'll, like the Go Brandon or the...
we could put a DeFlock Idaho T-shirt together.
Like the flock offs or whatever you saw on there. So that is freedom of speech. That is the most fundamental, daily, basic, personal choice that someone makes on what they cover themselves with, which is an expression. Even if they're not fashion forward people, you're still choosing to put that on.
It's interesting because when you look at, like, there's been studies where they do, because we're talking about surveillance. So there's studies where if people are under constant surveillance, they choose not to express themselves as much. And so I'd be curious. I doubt there's probably no statistic, but I wonder how that would affect like fashion freedom.
Absolutely.
Like people may not wear that shirt that says "flock off" or DeFlock Idaho or something political.
Well, and you notice it even now in the political environment that the United States is in, where there is more, I feel, more limits put on free speech, or there's higher consequences of persecuting certain free speech or certain stances on certain issues, and people being like cancel culture years ago, but also now deplatformed or let go from organizations that they have careers in, whether they're academics or CEOs or, you just see that happening. And I would have never, coming from a Soviet society, coming from that background, I would have never thought I would ever see that happening in a free society like the United States, where you could express yourself through clothing and through your thoughts and through your speech and through your behavior. and also through your movement, which brings me to this: free people move in a free way.
Right.
And so I'm so fascinated by today's turnout here. It was just so great to see so many people at City Council here in Twin Falls, and so many that were in standing room only, and then also in the overflow of the overflow room. They were in there, and people making public statements. And did you expect to have those kind of numbers today?
I know. So when this first started, when I first kind of went down this path, I noticed in Wilder, and we never had any public comment. And so I posted on our community group. This is well before there was even the idea of like a DeFlock Idaho or anything. And we had a packed room. And one thing that they did is they decided to remove public comment. And that's kind of like the radicalizing point of where I continued down this path. I probably, if they allowed public comment, I would have probably gone up there, said, why do we have these? They would have just ignored me, and I would have went on my way and dropped it. But
why did that?
Sorry, go ahead.
You said radicalize? Why did it feel that way? What was about that?
Well, so we want to put cameras in to basically mass survey citizens, but when citizens have input on that, we're not allowed to speak. And I think that's very telling of kind of the environment that we're in right now. You have council members who really aren't serving the public. I don't know how they get in and into these positions. Well, I do, because people aren't educated, and I'm probably no better than anyone else. It's hard to follow your local elections and on top of everything else you have going on in life. Me doing DeFlock Idaho has taken a significant toll on my time, and so, for someone to research, and oftentimes there isn't even a way to research your local council member unless you know them. For instance, with Wilder, the one that we had win was like, he just put up a couple handwritten yard signs. We have 1,700 people, and 65 people voted in the last city election.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even if you look at 450, I think, registered voters, and only 65 people. So it's a really abysmal amount of people. I think it's like 12%. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we'll have to cut that out.
That sounds even higher than some of the outcomes in local elections here, depending on if it's like a school, a board election, or a levy. I mean, sometimes the numbers are just like
crazy low.
150 or 200 people in a population our size, compared to what you're saying. I mean, that's not horrible outcome or turnout.
And so I think what's happened is we get the government that we allow, and I think too many people have just allowed these things to happen. I think there's a lot of people pushing against it, like tonight. So I did Wilder. We didn't get to talk, and since then I really haven't been able to get people to show up because they silenced their constituents. I think it's an egregious thing that it's one thing that I think we need to fix in Idaho code. And there's actually been pushes in the legislature to try to amend it to where they have to allow public comment, but it's yet to happen. But circling back, so we did Caldwell, and we had a lot of people, a decent amount of people. It was a standing room only. But nothing like tonight. I mean, there was so many people speaking. I think there had to have been 20 people or so speaking.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was one, which was the former police chief, speaking for Flock. And so this is a bipartisan issue. There doesn't seem to be much support for
I noticed that tonight, just hearing some of the people who introduced themselves, maybe some of the role and capacity that they have in the community. And I thought to myself, and then even I referenced to someone, I said, it's great to see so many young people, and there were older people. So there was this intergenerational shared concern for people from all different walks of life and backgrounds. Some people said, hey, I've never been here before. I've never come to a city council meeting. I've never made a comment, but this was their breaking point to come say something.
Well, and that's what happened. I had never been to a city council meeting before, like maybe a little bit before the beginning of this year. so 9 months ago, I'd never been to a city council meeting, but our city, they were trying to put out this firearms ordinance, and it was so restrictive it would have banned like a Nerf gun. And I've seen it where these local officials, they just go through and they vote yes. They don't critically think about they don't even hardly read, I don't think, what they're voting on. And so I'm like, hey, why are we trying to pass this? It's like, I'm not against saying you can't discharge a firearm within city limits, but we shouldn't be banning a Nerf gun. Or a water gun, you could even argue, was banned by the way it was wrote, construction equipment, things like that. And so when we're taking things from, it's this small, okay, we're trying to get rid of discharge of firearms in city limits, but then we're expanding it to all this other stuff. I think it becomes a dangerous thing where people aren't educated, they're not getting involved. And I was guilty of it before, but I went down for that and we stopped it, and they ended up, eventually they passed it, and definitely they changed it a lot. And then that's kind of around the time I'd read an article about in Caldwell of the flock cameras, and I was like, oh, that doesn't affect me. I live in Wilder. We have 1,700 people.
That's over there.
It'll never happen
here. Yes.
And then within
those famous words, it will never happen here.
And then within a few weeks, and maybe I don't know how long they'd been there, but within a few weeks of that, I noticed them. And so I went down to the police station. I was like, hey, who installed these? And our police chief says, me and the mayor. And immediately I'm like, what the heck? What do you mean? Like
without a public hearing or input?
No public hearing, no public input, because I'd been following the council meetings for a decent while since they did that firearm ordinance. So it's funny how things like expand, right? Like it started with this firearms ordinance.
Everyone has their gateway civic engagement moment, and then all of a sudden they just can't stop paying attention, and that's what it takes until it's affects your life or is personal. You just think like, oh, that'll never happen here. Well, that's those people. Well, that's happening in Norway. That's never going to happen in rural Idaho.
Well, and I'm really glad that to be able to kind of it takes a whole team. There's a lot of people involved in DeFlock Idaho. We're definitely grassroots. We have been starting a nonprofit just so we can kind of organize some donations in case we need them for whatever, maybe yard signs, or if it goes far enough, maybe legal action even. But it's very grassroots, and it takes a lot of people involved. And we've seen overwhelming support. One thing, like you were saying tonight with the meeting, is there was a lot of young people and a lot of old people, but there was also a lot of different groups, right? You had people that were, probably deep red registered Republicans. You had people. Well, I know there was that side of it, and then you had complete polar opposite, where you have the Democratic Socialists of America, showing
landing
up
on issues
and I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different groups, and I really like being with DeFlock Idaho versus some other groups where they have a lot of social issues. Like, I'm really glad that I kind of was able to carve out a path in this, because I'm able to focus on, ALPR overall. But also it's really refreshing to see, different perspectives and why different people might not like them. And being able to find common ground with people that before if you'd told me 2 years ago, go hang out with someone from the DSA, I would have been like, no.
Right. We get into our own islands, myself included. If you're talking and thinking and exchanging conversations with the same people all the time, you become each other's bubble.
It's an echo chamber.
And this is why that exchange, you brought up critical thinking, and part of critical thinking is having some kind of ingredient that would challenge it, a perspective other than your own, or in other words, a diversity of thinking, a diversity of people and livelihoods that will approach a situation not from this polished, ideological kind of, this is just what I believe in how things are done, but open to having a dialogue. Civics rely on dialogue, and this was a great example of that tonight, where you see people from many different angles, sharing their concern, whether it was about the data being collected or privacy, or the minors that are driving, their data being collected, the abuse that's close to home here in Jerome, the abuse by a sheriff.
We've seen it here in Twin Twin Falls too with their data sharing, and I guess maybe
Tell
we'll
us a
cover
little
that
bit
a little
about that. I mean, there was some of that covered today, but could you say a little more about
Yeah,
on
so
the federal level, the national level, just how? Because what I heard is almost this system has a capability where it's nationalized.
mhm.
If I understood it right, I'm still a student of mass surveillance systems used by our government. I never thought I
Yeah.
would say that, but I'm still a student of these systems and process. But I heard that said today, and to me, I heard, okay, so there is a kind of a national database or a national access base.
Yeah, so we found through public records requests that initially how it started was we saw a California records request of who's sharing data to them, and Twin Falls, Idaho Falls. Let's see. So there's more than just them. So Sun Valley, Pocatello, Twin Falls, Idaho Falls, Ada County, Lincoln County, Bannock County, and Jerome County
Sharing data with
to this California entity.
Okay.
There's no way that they have a specific understanding with them, like a MOU with them, and so all of these, I suspect, and we haven't gotten public records from all of them. We suspect are sharing just nationally. So there's a box when they sign up for Flock that's auto-populated that makes them share nationally.
That they just turned off.
They turned off.
Sounds like they just turned off last week.
Yeah, because we did a records request
Okay.
3 weeks ago.
Okay.
And because I was like, okay, well, they're on this California list. So who are they sharing with? And so we asked who they're sharing with and all the searches from these external people. And so we got this huge document. It's like 100 megabytes. I guess that's a lot because like my phone can't even open the document. And like a bunch of people's personal computers can't even open the document.
Okay.
It's just huge. And so finally I got it open and looking at it, they're sharing with like the Nevada DMV. But to circle back, why this matters is per Idaho Code 491432, these cameras are only allowed to be used for ALPR. Let's use ALPR. So automated license plate readers are only allowed to be used for law enforcement purposes, and that's defined as misdemeanors, felonies, missing persons, or if there was a traffic accident. So they can't just be used for,
like open range, just
right.
constant.
They're supposed to. And so what we saw when we got that
or I'm
data,
sorry, not constant, but the at-large population.
yeah, I would call, I mean, it's one thing like looking here in Twin Falls in particular is that I noticed looking at the map is it's like a geofence and Chattree versus United States just happened at the end of June.
And you referred to it as a real-time crime lab or
let's touch on that in 2 seconds.
Okay.
So but what I've noticed with Twin Falls is the way that the cameras are oriented is there's no way in or out of town. So essentially you're fenced in by these cameras. There's no way for you to leave without them knowing that you've left Twin Falls, which is concerning, right?
Very concerning.
Real-time crime center, that's something they were gonna request and then tabled because of the public outcry. One thing they love to say is like Flock cameras don't record all the time, but they are capable of it. Flock came out in 2025 and said, we'll allow you to record 24/7 for free. And so they're definitely capable of it. It's whether they're paying Flock enough money to do that. Caldwell has a real-time crime center integrated into Flock. It's through Axon Fusus is the name of the product, but allows them to integrate Flock cameras, and they're actually able to. It was funny when Caldwell had asked for Flock cameras. Chief Rex Ingram specifically sat there saying, "We will not have a room where someone's watching people drive around town."
And then
they now
that's
have
exactly what they
exactly.
have.
So the mission creep's real. So he says that we're not watching people drive around town. Now they are watching people drive around town or walk, because if you're walking down the street, it's real-time footage, And so there's definitely this mission creep. One thing Flock, they like to say we're not tracking biometrics. Well, keeping mission creep in mind, Flock's patent literally says that they can track biometric data. I mean, it goes and breaks it down to they could track you by the color of your shirt if you're riding a bicycle, race, gender, the color of your shirt.
Yeah.
All these ways that
They
could do
they
it.
demonstrated some of that in the presentation today with the narrowing down of a specific vehicle and stopping people and just and I imagine almost all the people that were within that category of that specific car were living their life going, location to location, unaware that they were being mapped or tracked or flagged by a system, that they never had consent.
They became a suspect.
That they were yes, they became a suspect, and it puts them into a vulnerable situation of illegal search and seizure, just being stopped.
So that's happened.
And that's happened over and over again.
So Lindsay Isaacs, she was I think she's 23 years old, lived in Florida. She was just going about her day. Some other lady with a car, the same make and model, a Dodge Durango, veered off the road and hit and killed 3 people that were working on their car on the side of the road or something. Well, Lindsay Isaacs' car, because it was the same make and model, when they checked the flock cameras, they're like, oh, here's the same make and model on the cameras. So that's what they used to conduct their investigation. And so they're like, they charged her with triple homicide, and she spent 13 days in jail. What's funny is the person it's tragic. It's not really funny, but the way they caught the actual criminal was that she took her car to a repair shop. And so it really proves the point that traditional investigations work. And the police chief, I think, they like to play this word vomit. I've been calling it newspeak because I've been reading, I'd never read 1984 by George Orwell, but it's newspeak in there. And so I've been calling it that. But they like to word things in a way that it makes it seem appropriate. And so he's saying, oh, we had to go and narrow people down, right? We had to go out and search and find video footage, and we had so many suspects, and we actually had to work. And so they actually had to prove that someone was guilty, right? Whereas with Flock, they're able to just say this car, this time, this place. And it has led to people actually being submitted to jail time. Whether, they weren't found guilty, they were let go. But, could you imagine 13 days in jail in general population in Florida? That's terrible,
You brought up George Orwell in 1984.
I haven't finished the book. Don't ruin it for me.
Yes, I won't. Someone else brought it up today at the city council meeting. George Orwell, when writing that book, that was around the time of... the Soviet Union was still around. And so that was around the time of, I think...
It was 40 something.
40s. So World War II-ish at time.
Yeah, I don't know if World War... I don't know if it was
after
before
that,
or
I think.
after.
I think after that.
Maybe.
And some people thought it was a book, and the audience was the people in the Soviet Union, or the book was written for people who were, in these... suppressed, oppressed, authoritarian societies, but actually it was written, the audience for that book was the free people. It was a warning to Americans. It was a warning to liberty-minded people to not take for granted, and the creeping of infringement on those liberties. You asked me a little bit about fashion of freedom. I think about that because ideologies and philosophies about how governments ought to... there's somebody repairing something in the building. Funny. Ideologies and philosophies about government's role in relationship to the people being governed. That is something that is also fashioned. That is something that is an idea, is a thought that becomes popular, that spreads. And I really was listening to all the speakers today, and their concerns felt very real to me because they were comparing it to, other places in the world. They're comparing it to what's happening nationally, how there's this surveillance society, taking place and increasing exponentially here in the United States. And I imagine the people you talk to probably are concerned with that too. And this is a tool, and everyone in that room was in support of law enforcement.
I support 100%.
100%. I didn't hear anybody, and I myself too. It's not so much the cameras, and it's to me not so much that we won't need technology and tools, but it's specifically in this moment, at this time, some of these companies and having no, who's watching the watchers, like
Right.
there's no oversight. And I think that that's something that is concerning because that's a conversation that should happen before the infrastructure is built and before the power is abused. And as you were saying, there was already this infringement of that with the national access to the information.
Oh yeah, so yeah, we saw so 49-1432 can't use it for you can only use it for investigation, misdemeanor, felony, traffic after the fact, and then missing persons. And I think those are good, feel good uses, right? We're still, even within that, we're still tracking everyday Americans, and we have seen misuses. I mean, I feel like this week there's been another cop being arrested almost every day for misuse. But what Twin Falls has allowed is federally for it to be shared. So the Nevada DMV has access. Oh, well, I guess as of a week ago is what he said, is they stopped sharing. I don't know if they might still be sharing with the Nevada DMV. But as far as having the national box checked, they stopped. And what I found funny was the doublespeak in the meeting where he says, we audit our searches. We audit regional searches. Mm-hmm. They've never audited the national searches. I can guarantee it. Because if they had, they would have stopped this a long time ago. So from the inception to Idaho law being passed, which went into effect July 1st of 2025. So they've been in violation of this law for over a year. And it took us doing a public records request for them
for it to be shut down.
And so I have some numbers here. So in May, they did 158 immigration searches. In April, there was 282 immigration searches. In March, there was 196 immigration searches.
Here, locally.
They're done on the national. So,
yes.
So they, who knows where they're looking
for
for someone.
So what agencies are accessing that information for those searches? Is it
for immigration searches, I have another number which is really interesting. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission is performing probably the highest percentage of them. And so they're backdooring it for ICE. So a lot of these cities are saying we don't work with ICE, but if you're sharing nationally, you are, because Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission is searching them for ICE. And so we saw in the 3 months that we got data for 158 searches for ICE by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission. Immigration, I guess if it was criminal, could be deemed as a permissible use, right? If we were calling it a misdemeanor. I just like to point that out as
yes.
Because there's always a lot of hypocrisy where they say the federal agents, we don't give federal agents any access. They are. The searches are happening. It's real. And whether those are exactly people in Idaho, I can't tell you, but someone did a search somewhere and it pinged Idaho data for that. Mm-hmm. The other one we saw which is blatantly against Idaho code, is in May, there was 1,151 searches for suspicion. In April, there was 941. And in March, there was 958. And so what do we define as suspicious? Suspicion isn't a crime. And so if we're only allowed...
Well, who defines what's suspicious?
I mean, so the officers do, right? But when I...
Is that same as probable cause, or suspicious is...
What is that legal... somewhere, there's no way to know. They just say we're searching this for suspicious vehicle, suspicious person. But what are we calling a suspicious person? You know what I mean? And why are we accessing a mass surveillance system? Just because someone's suspicious.
Suspicious, yeah.
And so the other one that we saw was in May. So this one's a lot. So 52,711 searches for traffic infractions. April was 53,865, and March was 55,861. Those vary from like just saying traffic infraction to saying expired driver's license, expired registration. Where they're searching for those, I don't know. We have no way of knowing.
Where are these numbers from? Like, is this public facing, this information, or is this from when you requested it?
So we requested it. I do have a share drive with DeFlock Idaho, and for a little bit I was kind of sitting on this information so that we could figure out a way to publicly present it in a well way. It's kind of hard to just say, here's an Excel sheet, take a look. And we did some posts where Ada County was explicitly searching people for suspicious vehicles. There was a few other ones. I'd have to look back at all what Ada County what we saw. But they were even doing some searches that weren't permissible under Idaho code. But yeah, so we do have a share drive. I guess I could tonight move that over to the share drive. They're huge files. They're like, there could be stuff in there and I don't even know. Like one thing that we saw that stuck out to me that was interesting was there was a search for, it was out of Tennessee, and it was for some sort of financial crime, but they were searching to see if someone took a vehicle from Tennessee to Texas. The fact that we have the capability to see if you traveled from Tennessee to Texas should concern everyone.
Yeah.
I don't know what the crime was. I don't know what, maybe they did something terrible. I don't know, but they should need a warrant or some sort of way, because now they could do that to you. They could do that to their ex-wife.
That's what people brought up. They brought up the abuse of this technology here in Jerome with an ex-wife.
Yeah. So that's exactly, so the Jerome County Sheriff.
The former sheriff, I think, was
searching for his wife
over 100 times or something like that.
Yeah, I've heard varying numbers. I've heard anywhere from 100 to 700.
Even one time to abuse a system like that, I think is very concerning for so many people. And like you were saying, if there's tracking of movement state to state, and on a local level, we're in such a small community. You talked about how the cameras kind of create this parameter, whether you're, get in town or out of town. But within town, we only have so many main arteries and traffic patterns that people take.
Yeah, you guys live along a canyon.
Yes, you can't, there's no portal that takes you out of this place unless it's a bridge or a windy road or another bridge. And so the type of pattern you live, and I brought up in my statement, that at one point, in these individual moments, they become a detailed map of a person's private life, that they go to a place of worship, or let's say they're seeking life or death services like domestic violence resources, or they need to go to law enforcement for a private matter, or maybe they have hostility, and they're a minor, or maybe they're an adult and they need to go to their counselor, or just these private spaces, moments, that even movements that we sometimes take for granted as Americans, thinking they are protected and they belong to us, and there's not this quote unquote like assumption of giving away your privacy when you're in public. I mean, yes, someone might take a picture of you, but they're not using a sophisticated camera system to basically stalk you through town day after day, defining your patterns and predictable behavior and who you associate with and where you assemble, and maybe even where you express your free speech, like at a rally or a protest or a council meeting. And so that's what's so concerning, is the gathering of information and the blurring of that line between, the boundary between where's government and the tools that law enforcement can use, and where's private life and private movement in a free society.
Right. So I've heard, this is kind of some arguments I've heard. So like one thing is like cameras don't have the right to record. Like a camera doesn't have rights. People have rights, and so they just put these
Good
cameras up.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's an interesting one I've heard. The other thing is, I think there's this misconception of that there's no expectation of privacy in public, because we do have laws that restrict your like allow you privacy in public. You can't stalk someone.
Yeah, I can't put my like cameras facing my neighbor 24 hours recording their life, or
Right.
I mean at some point I think that
If you
would
start
be
sticking in their
infringing
window.
in their window, in their private space,
Yeah.
and just because they stepped outside of their home, and I don't know if that's the best example, but there's this boundary, there's this unspoken space
Hmm.
of what belongs to my private life, and what
Right.
what belongs that my liberty is attached to, and that I don't want government in that space. Or if I'm a law-abiding citizen, this is something else you always
Hmm.
will hear kind of counter this conversation is, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, you don't have anything to worry about. You
Yeah. So the argument
That is the most
the saying I
ridiculous
saw.
thing to tell people
Yeah.
who are free, that hey, if you're not doing anything wrong, then you shouldn't worry about this much infringement or this much infringement or this one infringement.
Yeah. If I have nothing, I still don't want it spied on.
Yes.
And that was a saying I saw the other day. I think it's actually on our page. But so there is some interesting Supreme Court. I don't want to get too much into like legalism and
Yeah.
law, but so like with what we're talking about, so in Katz versus United States, which is one of the arguments many people use, it says the Fourth Amendment protects people, not places. What a person knowingly exposes to the public, even in his own home or office, is not subject to the Fourth Amendment protection. But what he seeks to preserve as private, given in an area accessible to the public, may be constitutionally protected. So even if you go into public, it may be constitutionally protected.
And
So that's
inside
where
your
I'm
car?
saying, yeah, inside your
even
car,
uh-huh.
right? Like they can't just open your door and go through your car, right? If you invite someone
Well,
over.
and including your data, your intellectual property that belongs to you, your
Mhm.
identifying markers, your identity markers that belong
Right.
to you.
Yeah, and so being able to create a trackable database of basically everywhere you've traveled. Like if I left my house and drove to Home Depot, they would know the entirety of my movements because there's enough cameras and surveillance along the way. One thing like Flock can create heat maps. So just say like, oh, well, it just captures one camera at one time. Well, how the chief was saying, oh, when we go and investigate, we go, okay, did the person go left or right?
Yes. Yes.
Flock does that. Flock says, oh, okay, they probably
The
went left,
movement,
they probably
follow
went
the
right.
movement.
And so it can create predictable heat maps of the most likely area that these people are in.
Oh, okay. See, I misunderstood that. I thought the way they predicted or kind of forecasted if they went left or right, was using the ring footage on
Right.
people's
So that's
door.
that's an investigative technique that's historically been around forever, right? And that's if you do it manually, right? So if you manually go out
Hmm.
and you can canvass an area, and this is how they caught Brian Coburg. They went out and they found private cameras
And tracked.
and tracked him, one place to the other until they found a license plate, until they found a murderer. And even in the cases that the police chief brought up tonight, it was the same thing. They weren't. And so what's interesting is one thing, he brought up these very emotional arguments of we found these people, we had to do all this work to find them, and now we don't have to do the work. And that's because of what I was saying with the heat
Yeah, that
maps.
was
Flock will do it.
that was very powerful to hear the neighbor and a friend of one of the victims state, please don't use my friends, or don't use family members. Tragic situations to kind of repackage and present this surveillance system as, here's the example. I really appreciated them honoring
Yeah.
their friend that way.
Yeah, that's good. One thing I've noticed with with it is he goes up there all emotions, playing on people's emotions. We should solve crimes. We should do this. But he was giving examples of how they solved crime before without him just fine. And then giving examples of, so really the only thing that it's done is saved them time. And one thing here's another. So this is United States versus D. Ree. So the forefathers, after consulting the lessons of history, designed our Constitution to place obstacles in the way of a too permeating police surveillance, which they seemed to think was a greater danger to a free people than the escape of some criminals from punishment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would love to catch every criminal that's ever done any crime, right? That would be everyone's goal, right? But we have to do it responsibly. So one thing I brought up in the meeting was, and the chief asked for tools that might improve this or might help them. They already have the tools. So one thing that gets thrown out is like this proverbial child trafficking or abducted child. So in 97, I don't know the number of children, but I know 40% of the children abducted in 1997 was unsolved. It went unsolved. That's terrible, right? But in 1997, we started the National Amber Alert System. And so
Yeah.
You fast forward to 2017, where and the numbers went up exponentially. So if you look at these numbers, they went up like the clearance rate of these just went up like crazy. So 97, there's 195 Amber Alerts for truly stranger abducted children. Not most of them are
family members.
Yeah. So they say there's like 400,000
Yeah.
missing children. It's untrue. There's only about 200 a year. So of the 198 that were, 195 were true stranger abductions. 193 of them were resolved through the Amber Alert system. And so we have the resources to do this already. We have, how many times have you received an Amber Alert for a missing elderly person? We get them all the time. Mm-hmm. But I don't think finding your grandpa that probably wanted to go out and be on his own anyways is more important than not knowing everywhere I travel.
Yes, and protecting people's liberties, their fundamental constitutional liberties. I mean, at the expense to that, I understand, there is that scenario. God forbid it's, a scenario we experience, but still, even in that moment, even when there's nothing to hide, I don't want to be spied on, don't want this surveillance of ordinary people where there's no wrongdoing. Mm-hmm. And so that leads me to ask, we have a very conservative local government, state government. Idaho is not known for just letting some corporation come in and surveillance the whole state. So how is this even happening? How do you think that, they're paying attention. I want to really advance the grace to think that our council members do care and do also respect the individual liberties of everyone in our community and are paying attention. And I don't know, are they not reading the fine print? How is Flock? And Flock's not the only one. I want you to also talk about some of the other companies because we get so focused on Flock. I want to make sure we know about the other companies too. But how are these corporations, how are these companies approaching such a conservative state and such conservative local governments and just getting these programs rubber stamped, without a public hearing or a presentation? Mm-hmm. And then more than that, getting the budget increased.
So I think we've seen a lot of these police chiefs. I don't know about the police chief here in Twin Falls, but a lot of the police chiefs here in Idaho are coming from California. So they were with LAPD or someone, and they already had these. There was some interesting emails between Rex Ingram and Flock where he's saying, I'm the one that brought Flock to Idaho. Give me $10,000 for the Idaho Chief of Police Association. And so he's, basically going out and soliciting donations under his official title and asking them for money for his private, organization. And so what's interesting with that is we found Flock was sponsoring ICOPA.
And who is this again?
Rex Ingram's the chief of police in Caldwell. And so we saw with ICOPA, that's the Idaho Chief of Police Association, where Flock was sponsoring them in 2022. Flock camera showed up in 2023.
Sponsoring them in 2022
Yeah.
as a PAC, as a
Like a
special
no,
interest?
so they're so ICOPA's a private organization. It'd be like no different than maybe like
just donating, making a donation to them.
right. So
to their
they all like last year they all went up
to
to
their
they all went to Sun Valley and
okay.
they played golf, and I don't think it cost them very much because they had a bunch of corporate sponsors.
Okay.
And some of those corporate sponsors put on classes like Flock. There's like whole itineraries online that you can look at.
And is that would have to be like financially disclosed also, this kind of, or is it private? It's a private entity?
Because I don't know. They are a nonprofit, so I know there is.
Nonprofit,
I know there is
would.
some
Disclosure
that has to happen. We haven't looked into that avenue at all, but we know Flock has sponsored it. They post their corporate sponsors real big, giving them a big shout out and a big high five. And even in that email, he's like, "Oh, Flock was a top tier contributor for the last every year prior to last year when he was asking them for money."
And at the local level, what do you think? What's in it for Flock, and how is it that, or these surveillance companies, and how is it that they are approaching our local police chief or our local mayor or council members to
I'm the most educated.
Convince them on these programs?
Yeah, and so I'm the most educated with Flock. And I think our movement as a whole, like, kind of discredits our own self because we focus on Flock. And
what are some of the other ones?
So Axon, Meridian uses them, and then I know Nampa and Post Falls use Motorola.
And I guess Flock could even change their name and do business under.
Axon did that.
Did they?
Axon made a drone taser. So it was a drone with a taser attached.
Okay, wow.
Before they were called Taser.
Uh-huh.
And people were very upset, and like VPs got fired, so they rebranded to Axon.
Okay.
Which I guess was maybe a good thing after you make a drone taser, whether you think that's a good idea or not, So yeah, Flock could just change their name. One thing is like Flock is a privately held company, so they're not accountable to anyone. They're owned by private venture capitalists, whereas at least Axon and Motorola are accountable to their shareholders. So that's one of the differences, but all of the technology functions the same. So like Caldwell has the Flock cameras, but they contract with Axon Fusus for their real-time crime center.
Okay.
And then, so they're all kind of interconnected. They all, when you drive past, they all create a searchable database. What we've seen and what's interesting right now, and I've been trying to dispel some of the rumors with, or like it was kind of the news speak. I'll bring that word up again. And so we found where Post Falls came out, the mayor came out and said, we're not going to use Flock, but we use Motorola. And then he invented this fake law. There is a law saying like public records have to be retained for 2 years, but there's no ALPR data is not covered under public records law. There's no time requirement. They can store it for however short or however long they decide. So Flock's standard is 30 days, Axon's is 60 days, and then Motorola gives customizable, like completely customizable. They can customize it with any of them. They can pay more. So Flock will do whatever amount you want to store it for if you just give them more money. Obviously, all they want is money, right? They're a private company. And Motorola, with Post Falls, what we found is the mayor said that they retained the data for 2 years. So can you imagine where right now we're upset about storing my travel data for 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
Now storing someone's travel data for 2 years. How much of a comprehensive picture you would get of where everyone goes. I don't know. We haven't dealt with, and again, that's where I said we've done a disservice to ourselves. So I have done like records requests on Axon and Meridian. Nampa uses Motorola, but I've left them alone. And then now, Post Falls. And so maybe that's a direction we need to shift. And so I have wanted to I think when I started this, Flock cameras were what affected me. And they are one of the bigger players in the game. But what we're seeing is cities are canceling Flock and then just switching to Axon.
Just switching the companies.
But you saw today, no one
that happened in Colorado, I think, too.
Yeah. But no one here tonight was saying we're against DeFlock.
Yeah,
It,
they're
we're against mass
against the
surveillance.
entire thing. Yeah, the entire surveillance.
But when I started this page, I don't, because this has grown exponentially, like rapidly. I mean, we started this in, a few of us sat down and decided like, hey, we should do something. And we started a Facebook page. And, anyways, it went from like 250 followers for like a month or two. And then it rapidly, and it started in April. This page started in April. I have 17,500.
Of this year.
April of this year. So what is it? April, May, June, July? 4 months?
Yeah.
4 months has 17,500 followers. And it actually probably have more than that already because I get hundreds of more followers a day.
And this is not your job. Thank you for doing this. I know how much time it takes to
it's a lot.
file, for public requesting the information, public
Yeah.
requests, to do the research. For every minute that you share with someone, you have done hours of research. And this is not your job. This is your citizen doing your civic part for yourself, but also you're doing such a benefit to the greater good.
Right.
And a lot of times this is so thankless. People don't realize that it takes someone, to take charge in a way and champion defending their own liberties, but somebody else's, and then just defending our way of life. But they don't realize how much work, intellectual, labor that goes into it. But then also you're putting yourself at risk because then you're seen as this radical person that is, hosting these meetings and putting people together and doesn't like law enforcement or wants anarchy or I don't know, wants to ruin these cameras, whatever the perception around it is, when in fact, you're really wanting to defend our free way of life and keeping that type of society for the next generation and next generation. Like someone said there, once you integrate these technologies, and the infrastructure is there, they just expand. It's just that's the nature of that beast. They expand and expand.
That's exactly what they wanted to do by adding the real-time crime center.
Yes. And today today how the budget was just kind of changed last minute. The line item on there. That they decided, well, we'll just put this on hold for now.
We're going to fund it. We're going to fund it, but hold it off.
Yes, and someone mentioned that too. They said, well, we'll just put it, that means what I understand is you're going to put it on hold until the public is kind of like calm, and then all of a sudden it'll get funded. So you really have to watch. This is why people have to stay engaged at the local level, because at the local level where it impacts you the most directly.
Yeah. And that's what we've been trying to do is empower local people, right? I'm one person. I can only do so much. I actually wasn't even going to go probably to this meeting.
Yeah, thank you for driving all the way down here.
I'm glad I did. I feel invigorated, right? Like you get so into it, like you see everything and you're like, man, this is a loss or this is a win. I know. I think Jerome's trying to put them in now because Jerome County had them. Now Jerome City wants them, even after the misuse. And so you see, like, where can I make an impact in that? I'm probably not gonna. I can't go to every public meeting. I can't go to everything. But we've been able to organize people within their communities to be able to stand up against these. And there's some other really good groups. I probably won't name any just to keep the bipartisan thing.
Sure.
But we have other groups, and I think one thing I noticed about Twin Falls in particular is there is a lot of civic-minded groups here where some areas we don't necessarily have that. Like I don't think Caldwell.
Well, it's stuff like this that has mobilized them. They just organically have formed whether it's the groups themselves or alliances to one another, or they'll show up on issues when they land on issues. And it's things like this, just like with you at the individual level, that, puts them into an action mode. And you are doing so much by informing people because it makes them pay attention.
Yeah.
And if we're not paying attention, you can't know what you don't know to pay attention to. But when you bring it to their attention, and now at the local level, really that's the biggest step anyone can take, is to make someone else, pay attention or inspire someone else to pay attention. And you did that in this community. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's what I've tried. So I went ahead and I like, people were like, "Hey, how do we do something?" I have all these people I'm talking to in Twin Falls. I'm like, man, like I can't do everything for you. Pick a date. Let's choose a date, and we'll make a flyer and we'll post it.
Yeah.
And that's really all I had to do.
Yeah.
And then other
and then
groups
show up.
And then I
The
did show.
biggest
I did
step,
show
you
up.
showed up,
I did
yes.
show up. I wanted, and I'm
And
really
you
glad I
filed
did. A tort claim.
a tort claim today.
Yeah, I did.
Why?
Do that.
For someone who doesn't know, what is a tort claim and why did you file one?
A tort claim, it doesn't mean much. Basically, it's just reserving your right to file a lawsuit. So if you say you did me wrong in some business dealing, I could come to you and say, "Hey, you did me wrong. I'm going to sue you," and you would have the chance to sit there and be like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry. Let me fix that."
Mm-hmm.
The government doesn't really have that ability, and so you have to file a tort claim to say, "Hey, you did me wrong," and it's like an arbitration period, and then they have 90 days to say, "Hey, yeah, we did something wrong," or "No, we didn't do anything wrong." One thing that's funny is all of the things that, the chief of police went up there and said, "Well, we have these 3 concessions," right?
I noted 2 of them. I missed one.
So 2 of them, the 2 concessions that he had were things that we filed. The first one was what we've already filed tort claims for in other cities.
Mm-hmm.
I filed specifically in Wilder and Caldwell, basically saying that, hey, you guys are allowing Flock to use the data in any way to further their business. And I would like to make that clear because a lot of these,
for their training videos and
they could do it for
product improvement.
They could use it for anything with the way that the contracts wrote. But one thing that the only thing they're really sticking to is saying, hey, you guys are using it for your AI product improvement. And in that Idaho code where we were talking about it's going to be used for law enforcement purposes, it explicitly says that it can't be used for personal use. So by Flock improving their product, it's a personal use to them. It doesn't benefit anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
It just allows them to go sell it to other
doesn't
people.
solve a crime, doesn't help law enforcement at that point directly.
What's funny is they say, oh, well, it helps them read. But like Flock showed up to the Wilder meeting over Zoom, and they're like, oh, it allows us to read the difference between a Toyota Camry and a Nissan Altima. Those are the exact vehicles they said, by the way. And so we
had Ferrari and Lamborghini today.
Ferrari and Lamborghini, yeah, that is what we had. Red. And so they say that, but like, right, there's other ways you could improve. You could go rent a Ferrari or a Lamborghini and take some pictures of it. So there's ways to improve.
Use dummies.
Yeah,
or mimic it for the system to.
They sell Hot Wheels.
Use Hot Wheels models.
So there is ways that they could improve it without even using our data to start with. But they also, not only do they do that, but they use the data for sales pitches, for they've accessed playgrounds and other things. And it's super concerning. One thing that these police officers keep saying, oh, we're just reading license plates, but we've seen it where in Wilder we have one faced into the park, and they've answered that as like, oh, well, it's a CCTV camera. But one thing that they don't have, I think there's a clip of me like yelling in a council meeting, got very, very passionate about it.
I liked your restraint today.
Yeah, I yelled at the end. I did yell at the end. I just I was like, let me just yell at them. Let's, and it wasn't much.
They did really well too, monitoring, I think, getting everybody that wanted to speak. They could have cut it off for everybody. And
I'm very thankful that they allowed
there were
speaking.
So many, for as many speakers as there were, I want to say there were probably 10 times as many people in that room. Mm-hmm. So there were there were a lot more people than there were fewer speakers.
The plot, well, that seems to happen everywhere, right? There's not a lot of people.
It's very intimidating to talk about this in government, about government, with law enforcement in the room.
Right.
Because it's just intimidating, because people in a small community like this, where everybody knows each other, they don't want
Well, now
you know, this particular technology abused, misused, or retaliated,
right.
or
Now imagine signing that in the city of Wilder where there's
yes, where there's
1,700
two people, or how
and
many?
so I've had people and
1,700.
1,700. And so we're talking about mass surveillance, and the point we'd brought up earlier was the how increasing surveillance causes people to be less free. It causes them to act less free.
Change behavior.
And so one thing I
Changes
saw,
how they
like,
express their
I-
speech, their thought, their
Yeah.
where they show up.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so I went through and I created a voters initiative. Originally I was targeting a recall, but a recall is a little higher bar as far as like the amount of signatures you need. And so I settled on a voters initiative, and it taught me a ton because I had to form my own ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
I've never done that.
Yeah.
So I start forming my own ordinance, and the first one was pretty clunky, but then you get enough signatures on that, and then the attorney has to review it. So the city attorney goes through and he says all these things that are wrong with it, and I'm like, okay, well. And so I had to figure out, I learned how to structure an ordinance. I learned how to build an ordinance. And then I go out and when I'm asking people to sign this, they're like, well, do you think, I know the police chief, do you think he's going to
Yes.
retaliate? People are truly fearful. And
we had
we
that
shouldn't-
experience with the recent citizen initiatives with
Mm-hmm.
medical cannabis and or medical freedom or reproductive rights. People putting their signatures on a petition, which the most basic constitutional right to petition your government. And people express that, and they would say,
So you've seen it too.
absolutely.
It's an interesting thing.
They're worried about retaliation. They're worried about if their like employer finds out, or if they're part of a union or a school union, if it has to do with education or work in the medical field, and so much of that, and that's sad. That's sad
terrible.
to think that as Americans, we really pride ourselves on being the freest people. We celebrate this. We just celebrated
250 years.
250 years of, being that free.
Right.
And the most basic right of putting your signature, the most basic civic exercise of putting your signature on a piece of paper, which is what our founding fathers did when they gave the middle finger to the king,
Right.
And but people are intimidated to express their civic
The Declaration of Independence
beliefs.
was a bunch of people signing a piece of paper.
A bunch of people signing a piece of paper,
Yeah.
and they were scared too,
Right.
but they did that so that we could sign a piece of
Right.
paper and have that protected,
Right.
And have our
Yeah,
ability
First
and our
Amendment right.
privacy exactly.
We were supposed to be able to redress the government for grievances, and
Yeah.
so people, and it goes.
That
hand
was
in
very
hand.
courageous to see those rooms full of
Yeah.
all those people.
Oh yeah,
That was very courageous
what was,
of them.
What was so crazy is I don't remember his name. I should have got his name when he left. I'll have to watch the video back and try to reach out to him maybe. But he goes up there and he's like, "This is my first time ever speaking."
That's the person I was thinking of too.
And-
that he's
and-
never come to a council meeting or had any reason to. This was the issue
Yeah.
that brought him there.
And what's so crazy to me about that is like I was just there,
4 months ago?
Well, no, it'd be like 7, 8 months ago, 9 months ago. But I remember being in those exact same shoes. I still get like, you kind of get an adrenaline rush. You look pretty comfortable up there. Maybe you weren't, but I always get an
nervous up
adrenaline
there.
rush after,
I
after
get nervous because they have threatened to have me physically removed by law enforcement in prior years. But that doesn't bother me. That's part of that territory.
Right.
It just, I have seen them shut people down, and it is their basic right that they have the right to come and express. And it is very intimidating, like that
Right.
man expressed.
And so I talked to him briefly as I was heading over here. But it brings such a new, refreshed view to it. 'Cause it's like, I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not very far retracted from that even. Like, so it's interesting where the course of things can go and like how much just being involved with this has shifted my life in 9 months.
And it charges you, like that moment for you, just like the moment for so many of these people in the room. There's something about people coming together and they are practicing those principles and fundamental methods that keeps our democratic way of life. People say we're a republic, but our institutions, they're built on this democratic principle of dialogue, of challenging the government and keeping it accountable to us, serving us. And there's something so contagious about that. And that's something that is so just recharges your civic spirit. And those people walking out of the building, standing outside, talking to each other, networking, exchanging phone numbers. Hey, let's go grab dinner.
Someone handed me this as we were heading out.
Yes. So what is this?
It's a laser. He said it's not strong enough to actually do anything.
It's the official brand name of, what is it?
Maybe we should make some branded lasers. You know what's interesting is you can... I'm not saying
we're not promoting.
I'm not promoting
we're
this.
not promoting.
He said this is strong enough not to really... It won't do anything. But
this is for you to point to the PowerPoint when you're talking
about... Pointing to the PowerPoint. I'm going to do a class.
There you go. When you're doing a class. I'm going to do a class
on August 29th in Caldwell. I haven't gotten everything together yet. But yeah, I'll use my laser pointer for
there
my
you
class.
Go. That's what it's for. You've got to cover your legal basis. So this is your PowerPoint pointer. Thank you to the person who gifted you.
I don't even. He just handed it.
Just brought a bunch of them to the meeting.
Yeah, he's handed them out.
I didn't get one, but that's okay. I love that he labeled each one of them. They're all they're all branded. Really what would you like people to know? You have a class coming up.
Yeah, that's one thing.
What would you like people to know? What is our next step here in our local community? I know the budget process is ongoing. Do people keep showing up to meetings? Do they write letters? Do they contact legislators? What is the call to action for the next couple steps?
I say do all those things. I mean, I've been in contact with quite a few legislators, other people within our group. I say group, but I like to say we're a grassroots organization. It takes the collective of everyone. So like you were saying, like, man, you put so much time into records requests and this, that, and the other. And I do some of my own records requests, but I leave anymore. Early on, I used to do quite a few, but now when I'm interested in something, I just do like a very targeted records request.
And records requests can be very expensive. Depending on the council, the city, they can charge you quite a bit.
I've learned how to. When I first started this with Wilder got very hostile to the process, and I've heard from other people that other cities have been very hostile to the process of, and you would think it's literally public records, but. And this is something I want to teach in that. So in the class I'm going to do, it's going to be an ALPR 101 class. So what I want to do is go over, this is a flock camera. This is an Axon camera. This is a Motorola camera. Here's some differences. There really isn't because they operate, fit, form, function the same. Some of the data retention stuff we talked about is different. Then I want to do part of it as how to do public records requests, because what I see
like a civic engagement
component. Because here's the reality of the thing, is a lot of people are united right now under the DeFlock movement. There's a lot of lessons that I've had to teach myself, and through the learning that I've taken with like how to do a records request, where do you go to do it, who do you ask, what do you ask for? Because of what I see so often is people do these records requests and they're like, I want the name, number, I want the contract, I want every email, I want. They're going to charge you for it.
Yes.
And so you have to do and ask for like the bare minimum of what you need to do your job. So like, for instance, the last request maybe I've done one since then, but like the Twin Falls one was one of the most recent ones, and I asked for who are you sharing with, and the access logs, and that's it. So you want to keep them very simple, very targeted, only the information you need. When you start asking for a million things plus one. Like there was one I asked for because we found Rex Ingram soliciting DeFlock for ICOPA. After that, I was like, well, is he doing this with other companies under his official email? And so, I did a targeted one with because if you just ask for all of his emails, you're going to get they're going to charge you, right? But I asked just for targeted emails, that had keywords like donation or something, and we got just a handful of emails back.
And that process alone is a learning process for so many people.
Mm-hmm.
They may have never even known that they can access public information or that they have a right to it,
Yeah.
or how to. Also, filing like the tort claim too. You filed one here in Twin Falls. There was another gentleman today that filed one.
Yeah.
And in theory, I imagine that anyone driving on these roads in Twin Falls could file a tort claim.
Oh yeah,
because
I can share mine.
if their
They can
if
do
their
it too.
data has been collected
Yeah.
or shared nationally or
I'm not
anything like that.
I'm not a lawyer. I can't give legal advice.
No, not legal advice.
But what I will say is that a tort claim, whether you pursue it legally or not, it at least reserves the right for you to file a lawsuit later. Currently, it sounds like they're going to fix kind of these issues that are like they're going to stop sharing nationally, which is
Yes.
great, a huge win.
And then the
huge
product-
win.
the
And then
product
the product
improvement.
improvement, which every city we've filed with, and every city we brought that up with, like Idaho Falls, Brian McKellar, he's been putting pressure on them, and they're already they had their meeting tonight. What is it called? One of those work sessions.
Work session.
They had a work session and they talked about Flock, and in that they were saying, oh, we're gonna push the amendment to fix it.
And it sounds like legislators also will bring it up maybe this next.
Yeah, there's a lot of
session.
legislators that are very concerned with this. I mean,
They're
there's
hearing
a
from their
lot of
constituents.
public pressure. So I guess like you were saying, where to go from here. I think if you, I can't come here every week, but I think if you live in Twin Falls, I think you guys, people here should keep pressure on them, especially as they're going through the budget process, to keep showing up to the meetings. I mean, even one person showing up to the meeting saying, hey, I don't support this, is at least something, And then the next thing, I mean, we're not in session with, legislators aren't in session. As soon as session starts, I think we're probably going to go down to the Capitol and go on the steps. I've never done anything like that either, but this is a super important issue, and I think they need to understand the gravity of people don't agree with it. They don't agree with mass surveillance, and I think there's a small minority of people, and what I've noticed too is like the people that are okay with this are in the government. And so one thing is the these police chiefs are okay with this technology now. The police officers are okay with this technology now, but they're not always going to be the person in power. They're not always going to be the person that has control over it. And you see that there is corruption that happens. It's inevitable. And so who's to say, it's again with the mission creep is once this person's out, that the next person isn't going to misuse it. Our police chief in Wilder, Dusty, I would share my location with him. If he, I trust him. I don't think he's an untrustworthy person. But it's who's going to come next.
Or a third party, or a shared agency.
Yeah, exactly. Or a shared agency.
Or a national database.
ICE, or, we mention ICE a lot, but even this data that when Twin Falls was sharing nationally was going into fusion centers, and then there was a couple of them that I can't remember the names of them exactly, but and essentially those are centers where federal agents are sitting down doing who knows what they're doing, and so people like to be like, oh, we're Idaho, we're free, we're whatever, but why are we allowing federal access into our travel data? It just seems like the complete opposite of what Idaho I mean, we're the state where Ruby Ridge happened for
Yes, if this was something tangible, if this was like infringing on property, if it was something tangible in a way that we're used to seeing that violation, it would be different. But when it comes to data, people don't realize just the stretch of where that can go, and the level of, even with AI, just the level of abuse and misuse. It doesn't have to be or even hackers, or just data harvesting that happens even by a foreign government. It's not even just our government, but the data that's collected, the surveillance that is patterned and targeted, and it just it's hard. It's hard to see this kind of modern change happening at a real, exponential speed. But
Yeah.
at the same time, when it feels like it's invasive, when it feels like it's infringing, that's an old thing. That's not something new. We know what that feels like. This is something as Americans we know inherently to speak up against, or we see it when it's happening somewhere else. Like if we heard about this happening, I mentioned where I used to live before it collapsed, the Soviet Union, they would have dreamed to have a tool like this to
Right.
control and surveil the population.
And we would have mocked them.
We would have said, "Oh my gosh, look at how they live, those people." And
We do that though.
can you
with,
believe that? Well, and that's something else.
with China
People
with like social credit scores?
Social credit scores. That's something else that's been brought up too. With where does this go next?
Right.
And we think, well, that would never happen here in the United States, and then we drive by it.
I never
every
would have
single
thought. And so
day.
that's the different, right? So you have, going back, so you have, 9/11 happened, tragedy. And then a ton of people, we create the Patriot Act. And in that we do, there's all these, there's now FISA courts. There's all these things that we've given up, the NSA, Edward Snowden coming out
Yes.
saying they're literally taking all your
Surveil-
data.
Yes.
And these are things that we accepted in the guise of safety and national security. And that exactly shows where there's always going to be this mission creep. There's always going to be, if these cities are creating trackable databases, the federal government's always going to want their hands in it. And they even have, they had like Flock's like, we don't share with ICE. And then they comes to find out there's like a pilot program.
Well, and we've seen the federal government when they want to classify a private company as something that's needed for national security, that they can definitely do that. So what's to say that this private company with all this information, it can't become an extended tool for
Right.
national security?
They did that. And so in New York, there was a council that canceled their contract. They said, we're not renewing. And then the mayor went around and created a public, this is ongoing right now. They created a public,
I saw that.
what is it? A public emergency
Yeah.
in the name of safety to keep the
Yes.
cameras up. And now people are mad. They've done vandalism. I'm not saying we should. I don't, and I especially don't think we're at that point here in Idaho. But they vandalized, buildings. They vandalized, and it was actually funny. DeFlock, whoever was involved in DeFlock there was like cleaning private businesses graffiti off. Like they went out of their way to be the person to, to present an olive branch. Because we're at the end of the day, like what DeFlock Idaho is no one. It's just a bunch of people mad about mass surveillance. And so anyways, they're going around cutting down cameras, and it's crazy that the people can speak, the council can speak, and then one person, the mayor, decide we're keeping these in power in place. And that's the same thing that you're saying with national. This could just become nationalized. It's a true fear. What we've seen is I think that, and people, people say that if you're not doing anything wrong, your phone's worse, but what has happened is we have all these Supreme Court cases securing our phone data. So, what is it, Carpenter? They had looked at cell phones pinging for a bank robber, and they decided that was unconstitutional. They couldn't search third party access and just get the data. So it ended that third party loophole, because you expect your cell phone data to be private. Same with the recent case with Chatri, is they went to Google and said, tell me which phones were in this area at this time. They can't do that.
They can't do that. Yeah.
But somehow they say you have no expectation of privacy in public, which is false. Like we said, with there's you can't stalk someone. I can't just go around. I can't go put up my own cameras every corner. They would take them down. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so if I went and I'm not saying to do this, but if I went and put cameras in front of every politician's house, I would be labeled as a terrorist.
Yes. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Not promoting that at all.
Not promoting that. But But that's exactly what would happen. And so to say that like the people are held to a different standard than the government is a big issue. And these cameras are the first time that I think that surveillance and surveillance technology and the fact that our Fourth Amendment has been eroded has been thrust into the public view. Because before you're just like FISA court, what the heck does that mean? Or Patriot Act, like, okay, how does that affect me? NSA, how does that affect me? But now you're driving down the street, American streets, and you're seeing surveillance and you're seeing things. So one thing, and that's like part of why I want to do this class, because I think it's really important that, you know, I hope that DeFlock Idaho and, you know, we may change our name to like No ALPR Idaho or something in the future once I feel that the ALPR term's understood by enough people. But I would love for this group, this brand, to have an end date, because that means that we did what we need to do and there's no problem now. I'd love nothing more than just to return to my life and be unbothered by everything. But what I'd like to do, and the thing that I think needs to happen, is we need to create civically involved people through the process. Because I've had to learn how to do this. I still don't know what I'm doing half the time. But I have knowledge now that I could share to someone else, that could share it to someone else, that could share it to someone else. So when the next issue comes up, we're able to effectively, you know, unite, whether it's Democrat, Republican, Independent, we can all come together and fight whatever atrocity it may be. And so do I see an end to DeFlock Idaho? I hope so. I hope I can go say, we've removed these from Idaho, goodbye, you know, and never make a post again. And so, but we need to make people that are capable of standing up for themselves, that aren't fearful of the process, because that's the wall.
Tell us a little bit about where people can follow you, get more information. You mentioned these classes that you're going to have in Caldwell.
Yeah, so we're going to have one at the Caldwell Library.
What day?
Right now we're looking at August 29th.
Okay.
I think we're going to try to record it too, so that people can view it later. And
you're welcome to have a class here if you would like in Twin
yeah,
Falls.
I might try to take you up on that.
We could notify people. We could notify on your Facebook page.
Yeah, so we have a Facebook page. If anyone wants to follow us, DeFlock Idaho. And then we're also pretty active on Instagram. I need to get better about cross posting. We do have a TikTok and a YouTube as well, but I neglect those.
And where can people reach you if they have questions or they're not sure how to get involved and where to start?
Yeah, I get a lot of messages just on Facebook Messenger. We try to get someone to respond to those. And then even they can email me at dflockidaho@gmail.com. So.
And before we close out, I just want to again remind everyone to get involved, stay involved. Like you said, this issue might, come to an end point or go away or maybe not, but being civically engaged. I love this quote you shared with me, the Thomas Jefferson quote.
Yeah, I can.
But staying engaged, staying, paying attention, that is our duty as Americans. That's our duty as free people, is not just the rights, but the responsibility to keep those rights.
Yeah, so one thing I've realized is, this is a super bipartisan issue. It involves everyone, and it affects everyone. And so there's a saying, or a quote from Thomas Jefferson, and it goes, I've never submitted the whole system of my opinions to the creed of any party of men, whatever in religion, in philosophy, in politics, or in anything else where I was capable of thinking for myself. Such an addiction is the last degradation of a free and moral agent. If I could not go to heaven but with a party, I would not go there at all.
That is such a powerful quote. That's such a beautiful quote. And I think a perfect way for us to, round this conversation up today. And what else would you like to say before we end our interview today?
Just get involved. I think like we were saying with the guy that took his first step, being involved today. I think it's it's a very big reminder that, you know, all it
It
takes
was so inspiring.
is one thing, right? It takes one topic.
One thing,
be
showing
passionate
up.
about it.
The lady sitting next to me said, I don't think I could speak. And I said, you already did a major, major thing by just showing up.
Right. She probably never showed up to one before.
Using your body, using your first property
Mm-hmm.
to come and step into this space, civic engagement. You're already, like, come back to body language, right?
Yeah.
Coming back to that, like, our first expression, our first freedom of speech is through our bodies, where we show up, how we present ourselves.
Right.
And which is so much more important in today, talking about movement and what's revealed about our movement and
Right.
what's revealed about where we show up in our communities. So I thank you. I think that your one step has, you know, rippled into effect and community mobilization and community service and education in such a big way. So I thank you for doing that and for teaching others to do the same.
Yeah, that's
And-
our goal, our end goal. I think if we can get past just this one topic and we can have involved people, I think that's a betterment to our society. So it was
Yes.
awesome. I'm really glad you had me.
Thank you,
I think we
Tyler.
could talk all night.
Absolutely. Tyler, I hope that we do talk again. It could be
Yeah.
on many other issues, and I look forward to your class
Okay.
that we can
Yeah.
hopefully host here in Twin Falls. And I thank everyone who showed up today at the city council meeting and made their voice heard. And please keep showing up, not just for, DeFlock, or not just for this mass surveillance program and issue, but all the time. It is so important. It's the lifeline to our free
Right.
way of
That's how we
life.
hold them accountable.
Exactly. Thank you
Thank you.
again. I appreciate you being a guest on my podcast.
Yeah, I'll try to come back.
Yes, thank you.